So, honey, how was the record show?
Oh, it's good.
Did you sell a lot of records?
Yeah, I sold a few.
Did you buy some records?
Hey everyone, welcome back to Graybeard's Nation. Today I'm sharing my adventures as a vinyl record show vendor, also known as a record fair in the UK. It's something I've been doing for years, and like everything, there's a good, a bad, and certainly an ugly. Sometimes, and unfortunately, my vinyl addiction kicks in, and oftentimes I leave with more records than I sell. And I'll show you some of my picks from the last show in a bit. So let's talk about it. So one of the best parts about being a vendor is the variety and selection that you're exposed to. It's not just about selling. It's about being a part of a community that shares your passion. I get a front row seat to all of the rare gems and rare, hard to find vinyl that come through the door often and many times before the public does. There's nothing quite like the interaction with fellow collectors and vendors. You know, we're all here because we love music and we share this passion, and it creates an incredible atmosphere. You know, the minute you walk into a vinyl show that you're there because it smells like vinyl. But the real highlight for me is the customers, talking with each one of you, learning new things, and certainly getting new perspectives on different kinds of music that I never knew before, and even understanding my collection of records a little bit better. I always say to not just the customers, but all the vendors that talking to the customers is the best part, but selling them records is kind of a bonus. So as I'd mentioned, there's a little insider perk to being a vendor. You get to make deals with the other vendors even before the doors open. We do trades. We discount each other's records. We look at each other's collections. We go through and really, talk about what we have and what we're getting ready to sell that day. I always get in as early as possible so that I can talk to and have a relationship with these folks. Many of these relationships will last forever because they share the same passion that I do. And this is all before the doors open. And trust me, sometimes it's extremely hard to resist the amazing records and the amazing deals. Some of these guys have been doing this 40, 50 years. And there's always a few vendors that I just can't resist. I always buy records from because they're great. But not all is crackle-free vinyl and sweet deals. Being a vendor has a bunch of challenges too. Let's talk about a few of them here. First off, it's kind of expensive. There's the booth fee, table fee, travel fees. You obviously have to feed yourself, not to mention the time and effort that it takes to get there, set everything up. It all adds up. And sometimes, you kind of start to feel the pinch, especially if you're doing one weekend after another. So I try to keep it to about every month. And I'll stretch, but then there's the slow days when nobody comes in and it almost seems like, wow, was a kind of a waste of time. But then you think about it, going back to what we were saying earlier, you get to check out the other vendors' records and you leave with a few, but that's really not the point, is it? It can be a little disheartening, at first, but then, you put a lot of effort into cleaning all the records and pricing the records and making sure that they're priced reasonably and fair. And it gives you a little bit of room to work with and haggle with other customers and allowing them to come in and bring some of their vinyl and doing some trades. It's great. It's free enterprise at its best. Transporting the records are also another headache. You got to pack them all up. You got to make sure that they're transported without damage, and they can very easily be damaged. We all know that vinyl can be fragile. It can warp. You don't want to leave it in the sun too long, so you can't leave it parked out in the sun. You got to make sure that it's taken from one cool area to another, and you got to maintain that. I was at a record show just recently where it was extremely cold. The vendor brought his records in from his house, took him into his car, and then immediately brought him into the show. And we noticed that some of the records were starting to warp. Now, later on through the show, by some miracle of science, they came back to being flat again. But these are just some of the things that you got to watch out for you. If you have a significant investment in your vinyl and you're not able to transport them safely without, damaging them, then really, what's the point? And then you've destroyed a bunch of records. And then, of course, at the end of it, you got to pack it all up and drive the 2 hours, 1 hour, or however long you took to get there right back home again. Now let's take a look at the ugly side of being a vinyl vendor. You might think it gets pretty cutthroat. And while there is some truth to that, it's not all bad amongst all the vendors. We have a pretty good relationship. We understand each other. We know what our collections are. We know how each other works together, but competition can get a little fierce. And most of us are pretty courteous. I make it a point to check out all the booths early on, obviously not just to pick out vinyl because that's part of it. But I look at everything to see what everyone has, because some customers will come to my table and they'll say, do you have this selection? And I'll say, well, no, I don't. But over there, Bob does, or, Mark does. And then those folks will go over there, and usually they're very thankful, and they may come back to you and go, hey, thanks for the tip. Thanks for hooking me up, and then buy a piece of your vinyl. Look, it's helping others in this passion that we all share together in vinyl. Now, I don't want to focus too much on the bad, but there are times where many of these vendors are not in it for the vinyl. They're not in it for the CD. They're not in for the passion. Some vendors actually do not even listen to vinyl. And I've heard them say that. Now, that to me, that's ridiculous. How can you even be a judge of anything if you don't even understand or use it? So at the end of the day, being a vendor is a mix of good, certainly bad, and ugly, which I don't like to focus on, but it happens. It's just the reality of being on this side of a record show or record fair. It's not just about selling or trading. It's about keeping the spirit of vinyl alive. It's about being a community. It's about talking to people and making long-term friends, people who share the same passion that you do. Music, vinyl, CDs, it doesn't matter. Memorabilia. This is all something we share, we love, we can hold it, it's tangible. It's not streaming. It's something we own for the rest of our lives if we choose to. Now let's take a moment to appreciate some of the great things that I was able to pick up. And yes, unfortunately, during this last show, I did pick up more vinyl than I actually sold, but that's neither here nor there. And my wife doesn't need to know. I did pick up this Seals and Crofts Half-Speed Master, Nautilus Half-Speed Master. This is the 1972 release of Summer Breeze. I absolutely love this record. It's a good record. The bass playing by Bobby Lichtig is really laid back in this, and this pressing is really good. Now I'll be honest with you. I have an OG pressing of Summer Breeze. After listening to this a couple of times, it's good, but it's not the same. There's a lot. Obviously. I believe that Nautilus Half-Speed Master is all digital for the most part. It's just kind of, they went out of business in like 81 or 82. Most of it was digital. I prefer, the all analog, but this also has a place. It's very nice and clear. And again, that bass playing on not just Summer Breeze, but a Hummingbird and a couple other, just really laid back. A fun record to listen to. If you haven't listened to Seals and Crofts Summer Breeze, and I'm assuming that's just not the case, I recommend you pick it up. It's pretty good stuff. All right, so the next thing I picked up was the audiophile pressing, UK audiophile pressing of Beckola by the Jeff Beck Group. This album is truly a blues rock powerhouse, and it also features Rod Stewart and Jeff Beck together. The sound quality in this is phenomenal, and it's really a great example of how a great pressing can be brought back to life through good audiophile pressings. Great classic tracks on this one. If you have to stream it, go ahead. But if you see this, actually, I've been kind of reliving Beck. I have not had an opportunity in the past really to be exposed to Beck, Jeff Beck. And then once I started listening to a couple of his records, I think Wired was the first one that I just really seriously got into. I'm like, geez, I've really been missing some of this. And, I've heard Blow by Blow. That's, kind of his common record. But then I started to branch out into some of his other stuff. And I got to be honest, I thought I was missing out. I have a feeling you'll be just like me, and those $5, $6, $7, $8 Beck records that are in just about everyone's collection at a vinyl show will be something that you'll start picking out, and you're going to see less of them. Beck is great, Jeff Beck, and make sure that you give him a listen, see what you think, give him a spin. Also, I was able to get a Jefferson Airplane Takes Off in mono. This is a reissue, obviously repressed in mono. Wow, this one here is great. It's like stepping back in time. It's kind of where psychedelic era really started. I won't say that it kicked off the genre. There are others that basically have done that, but Jefferson Airplane just kind of took it to the next level. It's very energetic. And of course, this is one of the albums that made this band truly a legend. Here's a fun one. This is Iron Butterfly. We see this everywhere. A lot of people have it. There's a lot of different pressings of it, but there's only one pressing of this. And this is the limited edition psychedelic splatter version. And the interesting part about this was pressed by Warner Music, and it's a very limited edition, and it was cut from the actual analog tapes. Now, I'm not a huge fan of colored vinyl. I know that people do say that colored vinyl, especially the splattered vinyl, sounds different. I'm sure that it does, but it's not necessarily the sound quality, which is, by the way, absolutely wonderful. It's the collector, quality of this. It's being able to own the splatter one. Very limited. Good luck finding this one. I was very happy to pick a copy of this up. Love this Iron Butterfly, and not just in Agata Navita. They have a lot of other cool stuff. Again, more of a psychedelic rock era band that really kind of took it to the next level. So those finds are a testament as to why I love what I do. I love being a record vendor. I love seeing the same guys, show after show, and exchanging stories and catching up. I love the customers and learning from each of you. And I also have been many, many times over a customer at a record show, and I appreciate it right back to those vendors who I know are putting in a lot of effort there. So even though my wife would never know, but I actually sometimes buy more records than I sell, but that's part of the joy of collecting.